Twitless, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the Jet Black Hedgehog, Shadow the Hedgehog, which is a manga adaptation of Shadow X Sonic Generations, which is it's an adaptation tie-in for that video game, which is kind of just a kind of a remix of Sonic Generations that adds a bunch of Shadow content to that. In this issue, in this installment, Shadow has entered the white space, which is kind of like this timeless void where a bunch of levels from previous Sonic games end up showing up, and you have to go do missions. And the way they're interpreting that in the comic is that he wants to go save Maria, and he's told by this little bug-eyed alien looking demon thing that if he collects these wishing orbs, he'll be able to bring Maria back to life. Obviously, that's anyone who knows Shadow or has seen the movie knows that Maria is raison d'etre for Shadow. So his journey leads him to his origin, basically, in this installment, Space Colony Arc, which looks just like the Death Egg from Sonic 3 from the Genesis, if you played that. But it's this asteroid Death Star looking space station with a Dr. Robotnik looking mustache on it. It's almost kind of Spaceballs-esque, but it's where Shadow was experimented on, where the original Project Shadow was developed to create the ultimate life form. And in this issue, Shadow faces off with his progenitor almost. It's the previous experiment, the original Shadow, essentially, which is the Bio Lizard, this cybernetic Godzilla lizard looking
Is
thing.
that who that was?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And so he faces off with this, and he ends up, he's the final boss of Sonic Adventure 2, and he's actually in the Easter egg in the Sonic 3 movie. Do you remember the scene where he's watching the movie with Maria, and they're like, beware of the alien? They're watching this old like horror alien movie.
Oh,
yeah. So that was their little Easter egg for the Bio Lizard, because it's this lizard monster. So that was
Cool.
that was the little nod. So this is in the manga. We get to see him in a much more impressive, much more dominating and intimidating format, as he actually provides quite a challenge for Shadow to overcome.
Let's take a brief pause to hear from the awesome creators joining us today and find out what cool projects they're currently working on.
Hey guys, if you love sword and sandal historical fiction with a healthy dose of ancient Roman and Egyptian fantasy mixed in, then check out Kyrie. We've got 450 pages printed so far, a fourth book on the way. Order your books today at curiecomic.com.
Modern day, classic superhero storytelling. Get The Adventures of Omega Girl, issues 1 through 5, now on Indie Planet.
Thank you to our awesome creators, and now back to the video.
Yeah, I just loved, once again, we're seeing a particular visual challenge being overcome, I think, by seeing, the Hedgehog universe, the Sonic universe kind of exist in manga form. It's not immediately obvious that these kind of characters can be translated well into manga, I think. It's a Sega property, but it's, I mean, the noodle arms, the proportions of the shoes and the gloves, and, there's so many features, there's so many details and features about Sonic characters that I just think are much more, it's not, it's more of a, like an artifact of just like 90s edgy, I don't know, like kids, like scrawled in a notebook kind of features. It's just a different aesthetic. It doesn't necessarily pair well with anything. We have a lot of Western comics, of course. Different publishers have picked this up over the years and done, to varying success, famously. But we haven't had a lot in the manga sphere, and it's neat to see that challenge taken up, and I think done rather successfully. I think there's a particular way you have to do action in manga, as we know. Like, and this that means that there's a particular way you're going to have to be able to utilize these characters to sell that action. It can't be done.
Give us an example of that, if you can. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. When you say it has to be done a certain way, like what do you mean?
Like Okay. So, for instance, there's a lot of like action scenes in Western comics. Action scenes in manga, for instance, are either going to be enormously compressed or enormously expanded, and there's a lot of stuff that you have to be able to pull off with action lines, speed lines, that if you don't have a really clear silhouette that is performant enough in order to sell that those particular punches and kicks and that sort of thing, like if it's not very easy to read, it's just not going to make sense. It's just going to look like a blur, you
Mhm.
know. And and I think Japanese readers in particular expect high quality action. They don't expect middling uh, versions of this. And these characters weren't designed unlike, like it makes me think of, for instance, there was some Zelda manga in the late 80s that took a very different tack in order to sell those particular characters in manga format. It basically reads like a Dungeons and Dragons manual. And so it doesn't look at all like the game characters. And that's the way that they felt they had to achieve, uh, legibility, basically. But what we're getting here, I think, is something that recognizably is the game characters, is the movie characters now, and yet it works well in manga format. So I guess like all that to say, I'm just impressed that they didn't have to bend or even break the designs of these characters in order to make it work in manga. They didn't have to make contort the video game designs to make it work. It actually does kind of work in manga format, even though there's nothing in the games necessarily that would lend you to think uh, that you could pull it off. But they did it.
I don't know if I'm biased also because we're reading Shadow, but I also feel like he's the ideal character to have in this format. I don't even know if it'll work as well for Sonic or Tails.
Oh yeah,
Um,
all the pathos.
It would work with Knuckles. Knuckles would do fine. Like,
you want a little
You need the
emotional
brooding
weight.
angst. Yeah.
Yeah, you want some, weight there to the conflicts, and Shadow has great backstory and
Yeah.
great relationship with Maria to play off of, and that there's a lot of rich material there to mine for them to establish this world. So he's in some kind of purgatory-like setting, and he wants to resurrect Maria. And of course, he's very fond of her. He's got this relationship with her, and he's got this little tag-along character. It's kind of funny. He keeps calling him bro, sidekick that just happens to pop up a little orb with bat wings. And yeah, all of that, dynamic works well with Shadow as a character. And the manga does what it's supposed to do. It's heavy on the action. It's heavy on the monster fight scenes, and the battles are intense. But the emotions are just equally so, and it doesn't skimp on either. Even though it's a very short format, gets straight to the point. So I kind of enjoyed the issue, actually. Shame to say, but yeah, it was pretty good.
I have conflicting feelings. So I do say that I will say that I think Sonic actually can work quite well in a manga format because he's very much a shonen protagonist. And so like he would fit right alongside a lot of other manga protagonists, and they have done some more humor manga before with Sonic previously. So it has they have toyed with that. Although, like I said, a lot of Sonic comics were actually done in the Western tradition. Like I said, the long running Archie, or the what's it, Fleetway comics from the UK. As far as manga go, I'd say it's pretty good. I think the thing that I admire the most about it is how well it is doing at adapting its source material. It's not following it exactly beat for beat. It's adding in, like, the Bug Eye character is not in the game. They added him in to, I think, actually guide us through the story a little bit. Otherwise, Shadow would. We don't need tutorial pop ups from the video game to tell us what's going on. They actually do that a little bit here and there to actually say, "Here's the story so far." But we need some character to bounce off Shadow and get him through the story, and so the Bug Eye character, and he actually is. People who are very familiar with Shadow can kind of tell what that character's aesthetics kind of predict what he'll be connected to. But the as a manga itself, I felt like it was there was just something a little lacking. There's lots of other action manga that I just enjoy a lot more. This one definitely feels like it is doing the tie-in, you know, and so it does definitely feels like it's an ancillary product. I think it's a fairly polished one, which I think is uh, does speak to its quality. I think that the action was well delivered, and like I said again, the adaptation of it is the thing that I tended to be most impressed by. Like when um, in years gone by, we've had lots of adaptations of video games, even in comics form. If you think about the Valiant comics, the Nintendo system comics with Captain N and the rest of it, where they were just like that. It was we were lucky we got Samus Aran to be a woman. Like that's the level of video game knowledge some of these people had. It was rare that they would get it correct, and it was rare that they'd portray it on the comic panel, consistently. And like Ganon looks like a weird boar, but he's not a warrior. And in some of those old comics, and Zelda's wearing pants, and all these weird decisions that get made in those previous video game adaptations. But here, in Shadow, like they even get to the point where when BioLizard gets mad and he's firing off these little bubbles. That's straight out of the video game. He actually fires these little spheres. He's got little eggs he can shoot, and so it's very obvious that his weak spot is that the life support system. That's the thing you attack with your homing attack when you beat him as the final boss. I believe the Doom Spear is one of his new abilities he gets in the Shadow X Generations game, and so like whoever was this is by Amado Yuki. Whoever was either editing Amada or maybe Amada himself, just everything's on model. The Space Colony arc is on model. The boss battle he's fighting is using lore accurate, video game accurate attacks. Shadow's using lore accurate attacks from the game. Like it really, like I said, it's someone is when we're so used to seeing people botch the adaptation, especially when it comes to video games, because people will often be in one world or the other. They're either a gamer or they're in the arts. So someone who can kind of like deliver on both, like that alone, I think is the achievement I am the most impressed by. The manga itself is okay. I put it as it's better than average. It's not great, but the achievement of being a video game adaptation that's so like on brand and on model on like everything is like that's a rarity, and I think it's worth to point it out.
It does also have an emotional punch at the end. Maria
Mhm.
might not realize that she's dead, and Shadow is still trying to connect with her, and searching for even tenuous moments where he has some semblance of connection, but it's clearly still lost. So there's still some urgency there for him to try to resurrect her, and there's a longing that's being portrayed, and it's kind of it's sad. There's a melancholy at the end. So I do like it that they're able to deliver that within this very short um, format, adaptation driven.
It's good. It's the only issue is that Shadow never really evolved past it. And so it really became his only one good story. And in my opinion, they should have really have left Shadow in Sonic Adventure 2, but he was so popular they had to keep kind of bringing him back. But like his best story is Maria. I completely agree, and she's a great uh, she's this wonderful kind of a little Nell from Dickens. She's too
Yeah.
pure for this earth, and it's and I do like her, and in the film, she's they did a really good job with her. It's just having seen this exact story, for almost, geez, has it been like 2 decades at this point? This
Mm.
like there was almost like nothing else for them to do with him afterwards, and it's really hard for him to evolve past that point.
So final takes, guys. Twitless, what did you think?
Like I said, as a tie-in comic, take a look at it. You could definitely read a lot worse.
Etsy.
Yeah, I think it's a very efficient manga, and like I said earlier, or like we both said, I think Twitless, that it's it's actually doing a lot of stuff on model relatively, which is really fun to see in a manga in particular. So if you like Sonic 3, the movie, I think you're gonna like this particular manga. So go ahead and check it out.
Thank you very much for checking out the video. Subscribe, like, and stay tuned for more.